The email notification lit up my phone at 6:47 a.m. I was halfway through my morning coffee when I opened it. Notice to vacate premises. You have 24 hours to remove all personal belongings and vacate Unit 3B. Failure to comply will result in legal action. Signed, Theodore Caldwell, property owner. I read it 3 times. My hands started shaking so badly, I had to set down my mug. Theodore. My own brother. The coffee tasted like ash in my mouth as the words sank in. 24 hours. He was throwing me out of my home like I was some deadbeat tenant who hadn't paid rent in months. My phone buzzed again. Another email, this one with an attachment. An official eviction notice, complete with legal letterhead and everything. He'd actually hired a lawyer to kick his own sister onto the street. I stared at the screen, feeling my chest tighten. This apartment had been my home for 3 years. I'd painted these walls. I'd installed the light fixtures in the kitchen. I'd spent weekends fixing the leaky bathroom sink that Theodore never bothered to repair. And now he was tossing me out like garbage. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. We'd grown up together, shared a bedroom until I was 12. He'd been my best friend once, back before money and properties and success had turned him into someone I barely recognized. I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. My neighbor below probably heard it, but I didn't care. The rage building in my chest needed somewhere to go. My name is Mia Caldwell. I'm 35 years old, and I just discovered my brother thinks he can destroy me. I called Theodore immediately. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. Of course, he wouldn't answer. Coward. What the hell is this, Theo? I said after the beep. My voice shook with anger. You're evicting me? Your own sister? Call me back. Now. I hung up and paced my living room. The apartment suddenly felt smaller, like the walls were closing in. Everything I'd built here, every memory, every piece of furniture I'd carefully chosen, all of it was being ripped away.
My phone rang.
Finally, I grabbed it. Theo, what is wrong with you? It's business, Mia. His voice was cold, distant. Not the brother I'd grown up with. I need the unit for a new tenant who's willing to pay market rate. Market rate? I've been paying you every month for 3 years. Below market rate, he corrected. I've been giving you a family discount and frankly, I can't afford to anymore. The building needs repairs. I need income. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. The building you supposedly own? The one Dad left to both of us. Silence on the other end. Then, carefully, Dad left it to me. You know that. That's not what I remember from the will reading. Well, your memory's wrong. His tone turned sharp. Look, I'm sorry it has to be this way, but I'm the property owner. The deed's in my name. You need to be out by tomorrow evening. He hung up before I could respond. I sat on my couch for a long time after that call, just staring at nothing. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and distant traffic sounds from the street below. Theodore hadn't always been like this. When we were kids, he'd been protective. When I was 8 and broke my arm falling off my bike, he'd carried me 3 blocks home on his back. When I was 16 and my first boyfriend dumped me, Theo had threatened to key the guy's car. But that was before Dad died. Before the will was read. Before money turned my brother into a stranger. Our father, Marcus Caldwell, had built his wealth slowly over 30 years. He'd started with 1 rental property and grew it into a small empire. 5 buildings across the city. 12 commercial units. Dozens of residential apartments. He'd worked himself into an early grave doing it, dying of a heart attack at 63. The will reading had been 2 years ago. I remembered sitting in that lawyer's office, Theo on one side of me, Mom on the other. The lawyer had droned on about assets and distributions and legal terminology I barely understood. What I did understand was that Dad had left everything split between Theo and me. 50-50. Equal partners in the family business. At least, that's what I thought I'd heard. I spent the rest of the morning calling everyone I could think of. Mom didn't answer. My cousin Jade was sympathetic but useless. My best friend Dakota told me to lawyer up immediately. You can't let him do this, Dakota said over the phone. Her voice was fierce, protective. This is an abuse of power. Family or not. I don't even know where to start, I admitted. I was sitting on my bedroom floor now, surrounded by boxes I'd pulled from the closet. If I had to leave, I'd need to pack. The thought made me sick. Start with the lawyer who read your dad's will. Get copies of everything. Figure out what you actually own versus what Theo's claiming. She was right. I knew she was right. But the idea of going to war with my own brother made my stomach turn. What if he's telling the truth? I asked quietly. What if Dad did leave everything to him? Then why would Theo have spent the last 2 years letting you believe otherwise? Dakota countered. Think about it, Mia. If the building was really his, he would have corrected you a long time ago. This smells like a power play. After we hung up, I pulled out my laptop and started searching through old emails. There had to be some documentation from the estate settlement. Some proof of what was actually mine. I found it in a folder I'd titled Dad's Estate. A PDF of the will, sent to me by the executor 2 years ago. I'd saved it but never actually read through it carefully. At the time, I'd been too grief-stricken to focus on legal documents. Now I read every word. The language was dense and full of legal terms, but the meaning became clear as I worked through it. Dad had established a trust. All his properties were placed in the Caldwell Family Trust, with specific instructions for distribution. And there it was on page 7. All trust assets shall be divided equally between my children, Theodore Marcus Caldwell and Mia Catherine Caldwell, to be managed jointly or divided by mutual agreement. Equally. Jointly. My hands started shaking again, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from rage. Theo had lied to me. For 2 years, he'd been managing the properties, collecting rent, making decisions, all while telling me he was the sole owner. And I believed him because he was my brother. Because I'd trusted him. I grabbed my phone and called the estate lawyer whose name was on the document. A receptionist answered. I need to speak with Malcolm Rivera, I said. It's about the Caldwell estate. It's urgent. Malcolm Rivera's office was downtown, in one of those old buildings with marble floors and dark wood paneling. I sat in his waiting room for 20 minutes, my leg bouncing nervously, before his secretary finally called me back. Malcolm was older than I expected, probably in his 60s, with steel-gray hair and sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He stood when I entered and shook my hand firmly. Ms. Caldwell, I remember you from the will reading. Please sit. I sat and pulled out my phone, showing him the eviction notice. My brother just sent me this. He says he owns the building I live in, but I have a copy of my father's will that says otherwise. Malcolm took my phone and read the email carefully. His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition. Maybe even sympathy. May I ask which property this concerns? The Morrison Building on 15th Street, Unit 3B. He turned to his computer and typed something. Then he reached for a file cabinet behind his desk, pulling out a thick folder. The Caldwell Trust. Yes, I remember this case well. He opened the folder and leafed through papers. Your father's will was very specific. All properties were to be held jointly by you and your brother. However, he paused, looking up at me. The trust required certain actions to be completed within 18 months of your father's death. My stomach dropped. What actions? Both beneficiaries needed to sign acceptance documents and establish joint management protocols. Did you sign anything like that? I thought back. Theo handled all of that. He said it was just formalities. Malcolm's expression grew grim. What exactly did you sign? I didn't remember signing anything specific. Just papers Theo had shoved in front of me at family dinners at Mom's house, once even at a coffee shop. Just estate stuff, he'd said. Lawyers need signatures for everything. I trusted him and signed without reading. I need to pull the full trust file, Malcolm said. He was already typing on his computer. If your brother filed certain documents without your knowledge, claiming sole ownership, that would be fraud. But if you signed something granting him control, I never would have done that, I interrupted. I wouldn't give away my inheritance. Not intentionally, perhaps. But these documents can be worded in ways that obscure their true purpose. He printed something from his computer and handed it to me. This is the property deed for the Morrison building, filed 18 months ago. It shows Theodore Caldwell as sole owner. I stared at the document. My brother's name in black and white. Sole owner. But the will says 50-50. I protested. The will established the trust. But trusts can be modified if all parties agree. The question is whether you actually agreed to this. Malcolm leaned forward. Miss Caldwell, I'm going to need you to think very carefully. Every document your brother asked you to sign in the past 2 years. Every conversation about the estate. Can you remember any specifics? I closed my eyes and tried to remember. There'd been so many papers. Theo always catching me at family events, always rushing me. Just sign here, Mia. It's fine. It's just paperwork. I spent 3 hours in Malcolm's office that afternoon. He pulled every document related to Dad's estate, and we went through them one by one. Tax filings, property transfers, trust modifications, bank statements. And there, buried in a stack of papers, was the smoking gun. A document titled Trust Modification and Transfer of Interest. It was dated 8 months after Dad died. My signature was at the bottom, right next to Theo's. I don't remember signing this, I said, staring at my own handwriting. But it was definitely my signature. My stomach churned. Malcolm put on his reading glasses and examined the document closely. This transfers your 50% interest in the trust to Theodore in exchange for a one-time payment of $25,000.
What? No.
I never got any money from Theo. According to this, the payment was made by check on the same date. He flipped to an attached page showing a copy of a canceled check. $25,000, made out to me, signed by Theodore. I felt like I was going to be sick. I never received that check. I never agreed to sell my inheritance for $25,000. That's insane. Malcolm was quiet for a moment, studying the documents. Then he said, "Tell me about your relationship with your brother. Were you on good terms when your father died?" "We were fine. We've had our differences over the years, but nothing major. After Dad died, Theo took charge of everything. I was grieving. Mom was a mess. He stepped up, handled the funeral arrangements, dealt with the lawyers. I was grateful." "And he asked you to sign papers during this time?"
Yes.
"He said it was all necessary for the estate." I trusted him. Malcolm Rivera agreed to represent me. "This has all the hallmarks of fraud," he told me as I prepared to leave his office. "Your brother took advantage of your grief and trust to steal your inheritance. We're going to prove it." Walking out of that building, I felt different, stronger. For the first time since receiving Theo's email that morning, I wasn't just scared and hurt. I was angry, and I was ready to fight. I called Dakota from my car. "You were right. Theo's been lying to me for 2 years. He forged documents or tricked me into signing away my inheritance." "I knew it," Dakota said fiercely. "What's the plan?" "My lawyer's filing an emergency motion to stop the eviction and demanding a full audit of the estate. We're going to court." "Good. When you destroy him, I want to be there to watch." I smiled for the first time all day. "I'll save you a front row seat." That night, I started going through every box in my apartment, every file folder, every drawer. If Theo had been lying about the trust, what else had he lied about? I needed to find every piece of evidence I could. In an old box of Dad's things I'd kept, I found letters. Dozens of them, written by Dad over the years. Most were business correspondence, but some were personal. Letters to Theo, giving advice about managing properties. Letters to me, telling me how proud he was of me. And one letter, dated 3 months before Dad died, that made everything click into place. The letter was addressed to both of us. "Theodore and Mia," it began. Dad's handwriting was shaky toward the end of his life, but the words were clear. "I'm writing this because I need you both to understand my wishes. The properties I've built aren't just assets. They're your future security. I'm dividing everything equally between you because I love you both the same. Theodore, you have a head for business, but don't let that make you greedy." Mia, you have a good heart, but don't let that make you weak. Take care of each other. The Caldwell legacy belongs to both of you. I read it 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Dad had known. He'd known Theo might try something like this. That's why he'd written it down, put it in physical form where it couldn't be disputed or reinterpreted. I took a photo of the letter and sent it to Malcolm. Then I sent a copy to Theo with a simple message. Found this in Dad's things. We need to talk. His response came within minutes. That letter doesn't change anything. The legal documents are what matter. The legal documents you forged, I typed back. I didn't forge anything. You signed everything willingly. You're just having regrets now because you finally realized what you gave away. My hands tightened around my phone.
He was going to play it that way. Fine.
We'd see how confident he felt when he was sitting across from me in court. The emergency hearing was scheduled for 3 days later. Malcolm filed a motion to stay the eviction and a separate suit challenging the trust modification. Theo hired his own lawyer, a slick corporate attorney named Vincent something or other, who wore suits that probably cost more than my rent. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Just a judge, a court reporter, Malcolm, Vincent, Theo, and me.
No jury.
No audience. Just family business being aired out in front of strangers. Judge Martinez was a middle-aged woman with sharp features and an impatient expression. She looked at both lawyers and said, "This is a preliminary hearing to determine whether the eviction should proceed. Keep it brief." Malcolm stood. "Your Honor, my client is being illegally evicted from a property she partially owns. Her brother has committed fraud by manipulating her into signing documents she didn't understand, during a time of grief, to steal her inheritance." Vincent stood smoothly. "Your Honor, MS. Caldwell is a grown woman who signed legal documents of her own free will. She accepted payment for her share of the trust. Now she's experiencing buyer's remorse and trying to undo a done deal. This is a waste of the court's time." "The payment was never received," Malcolm countered. "The check was never cashed. There's no proof my client received the consideration outlined in the trust modification." Judge Martinez looked at me. "Ms. Caldwell, did you receive a check from your brother for $25,000? I stood. "No, Your Honor. I never received any money from him. I don't even remember signing the document that supposedly transferred my share of the trust." The judge asked Theo to approach. He stood and walked to the front with his lawyer, looking confident. Too confident. "Mr. Caldwell, do you have proof that your sister received the payment outlined in the trust modification?" Vincent produced a document. "We have a canceled check, Your Honor. Paid and processed through the bank." Malcolm took the document and examined it. Then he looked at me and showed me the check. It was made out to me, endorsed with my signature on the back, deposited into an account. My heart sank. That was my signature. But I didn't remember endorsing any check. I didn't remember depositing it. "Your Honor," Malcolm said carefully, "we'd like to request bank records to verify where this check was deposited. My client has no memory of this transaction." "The check was deposited into an account in her name," Vincent said. "What she does or doesn't remember is irrelevant. The transaction occurred." Judge Martinez looked tired. "I'm going to order a 30-day stay on the eviction while we sort this out. Mr. Caldwell, your sister can remain in the apartment until we have a full hearing on the trust issue. Ms. Caldwell, I suggest you start looking for alternative housing just in case. We'll reconvene in 30 days. The gavel came down. Theo shot me a look that could have melted steel. I stared back at him, refusing to look away. Outside the courtroom, Malcolm put a hand on my shoulder. "Don't worry. We're just getting started." That night, I couldn't sleep. The canceled check kept bothering me. It had my signature, my account number. But I had no memory of receiving it or depositing it. $25,000 would have been significant. I would have remembered that. Unless I hadn't actually deposited it. At 2 in the morning, I got up and went to my filing cabinet. I pulled out every bank statement from the past 2 years and started going through them line by line. The deposit should have shown up around the time Dad died, based on the date on the check. I found the statement from that month and scanned every entry. Nothing. No deposit for $25,000. No deposit for any significant amount around that time. My hands started shaking again, but this time with excitement. Theo had forged the deposit. He'd created a fake paper trail to make it look like I'd been paid, but the money had never actually gone into my account. I called Malcolm's emergency number. He answered on the fourth ring, his voice groggy. "This better be good, Miss Caldwell." He faked it. The check deposit. It never went into my account. I have my bank statements to prove it. There was a pause. Then Malcolm said, "Fully awake now. Send me photos of every statement from that time period. I'll have a forensic accountant look at them first thing in the morning." I spent the rest of the night photographing documents and emailing them to Malcolm. By the time the sun came up, I'd sent him 2 years' worth of financial records. The forensic accountant's report came back 3 days later. Malcolm called me into his office to review it. "You were right," he said, spreading papers across his desk. "The check never went into your account. The endorsement signature is a forgery. Your brother created a fake deposit slip to make it appear the transaction occurred, but there's no record of the money ever reaching you." I felt vindicated and furious at the same time. So, he just straight up stole my inheritance. That's exactly what he did. And we can prove it now. Malcolm leaned back in his chair. "Here's what I think happened. Your brother had you sign documents during your grief, probably telling you they were routine estate paperwork. One of those documents was the trust modification. But instead of actually paying you the agreed-upon amount, he forged the payment trail and hoped you'd never check. Why, $25,000. My half of the estate is worth way more than that. Because he needed a number low enough that you wouldn't pay attention to it if you did notice. 25,000 sounds significant to most people, but compared to the actual value of the properties, it's pennies on the dollar. He was counting on you not knowing the true value of what you owned." I thought about all the times Theo had brushed off my questions about the properties. "That building's not worth much anymore," he'd say. Or, "Dad's investments didn't pan out like we hoped." He'd been lying about everything. "So, what's next?" I asked. "Now we go on offense." Malcolm filed a criminal complaint for fraud. He also filed a civil suit demanding full accounting of all trust assets and seeking to void the trust modification entirely. The case was big enough that it attracted local media attention. "Brother accused of stealing sister's inheritance," the headlines read. Theo called me for the first time in weeks. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "You've lost your mind," he said as soon as I picked up. His voice was sharp with panic now, not the cold confidence from before. "Filing criminal charges? Are you trying to destroy our family?" "I'm trying to get back what you stole from me," I said calmly. "You had 2 years to come clean, Theo. 2 years to do the right thing." The right thing? I've been managing those properties for 2 years. Do you have any idea how much work that is? How much stress? You just lived your life while I dealt with all of it. Because you told me you were the owner. You lied to me, Theo. You forged documents. You committed fraud." "It wasn't fraud," he snapped. It was family business. It was me taking care of things that you were too emotional to handle." I laughed bitterly. "Taking care of things? Is that what you call stealing?" "I didn't steal anything. I bought you out. I gave you money." "No, you didn't. The check was never deposited into my account." The forensic accountant proved it. Silence on the other end. Then, quieter. "You got an accountant involved?" "I got everyone involved, Theo. Lawyers, accountants, investigators. And they all agree on one thing. You're a fraud." He hung up without another word. The full hearing was scheduled for 2 months later, but things started moving faster than expected. Once the criminal complaint was filed, the district attorney's office got involved. They wanted to interview me, review documents, build a case. Detective Caroline Brooks was assigned to my case. She was a no-nonsense woman in her 40s who specialized in financial crimes. We met at her office downtown. "Walk me through everything," she said, notebook open in front of her. "Start from when your father died." I told her everything. The funeral, the will reading, the papers Theo had me sign, the eviction notice. The fake check, the forged deposit, all of it. Detective Brooks took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When I finished, she sat back and said, "Your brother's been running quite the operation. You're not his only victim." My stomach dropped. What do you mean? We've been looking into Theodore Caldwell's business practices for about 6 months now. We had a complaint from another property owner who claimed your brother forged documents to take over a commercial building. We couldn't make the case stick because the evidence wasn't strong enough. But now, with your case, we're seeing a pattern. He's done this before? We think so. And with your cooperation, we might finally be able to stop him. Detective Brooks closed her notebook. I need to ask you something, though. Are you prepared for what comes next? If we charge your brother with fraud, if this goes to trial, it's going to get ugly. Family relationships will be destroyed. Your mother will be caught in the middle. Are you ready for that? I thought about Dad's letter, about his hope that we'd take care of each other. Then I thought about Theo's smug face in court, his cruel eviction notice, his years of lies. Yes, I said. I'm ready. Mom finally called me 2 weeks before the hearing. I'd been avoiding her calls, not ready to deal with her attempts to mediate or convince me to drop the case. But I couldn't dodge her forever. Mia, honey, we need to talk, she said when I answered. Her voice was tired, older than I remembered. I know what you're going to say, Mom.
Do you?
Because I've been watching my children destroy each other, and I'm not sure either of you knows what you're doing anymore. I felt a flash of anger. Theo's the one who... I know what Theo did, she interrupted. I'm not blind. I've seen the documents. I talked to his lawyer. I know he lied to you. That stopped me short. You know? Of course I know. Your brother's been lying to everyone, including me. He told me you'd agreed to sell your share of the trust. He said you didn't want the responsibility of managing properties. I believed him, because why wouldn't I? He's my son. And I'm your daughter. Yes. Her voice cracked. You're both my children. And you're both tearing this family apart. Mom, he stole from me. He forged documents. He tried to throw me out of my home. How am I the one tearing the family apart? A long pause. Then, you're not. Theo is. But if you send your brother to prison, if you destroy his life, where does that leave us? Where does that leave me? And there it was. The real reason for her call. She wasn't defending Theo, not really. She was just a mother trying to protect both her children, even when one didn't deserve it. I can't let this go, Mom. I won't. I know, she said softly. I just wish it hadn't come to this. The full hearing finally arrived. The courtroom was more crowded this time. Detective Brooks was there. A representative from the district attorney's office. Malcolm and his team. Vincent and his associates. Theo sat at the defendant's table, looking smaller than usual in his expensive suit. Judge Martinez called the court to order. We're here today to determine the validity of a trust modification document and to address allegations of fraud. I've reviewed all submitted materials. Let's begin. Malcolm presented our case methodically. The forged check, the fake deposit, the bank statements proving I'd never received payment, the trust modification document I'd signed without understanding what it was, Dad's letter expressing his wish for equal division. Vincent tried to argue that I'd been careless, that my failure to read documents before signing them was my own fault. Ms. Caldwell is an adult, he said. She can't claim ignorance now just because she doesn't like the outcome of her decisions. But Malcolm was ready. Your Honor, this wasn't mere carelessness. This was a calculated fraud perpetrated by Ms. Caldwell's brother during the most vulnerable time of her life. He exploited her grief, her trust, and her lack of legal knowledge to steal her inheritance. And he didn't just lie to her. He created false documents to cover his tracks. The judge looked at Theo. Mr. Caldwell, did you forge your sister's signature on the check endorsement?
Theo stood.
For the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Your Honor, I can explain. It's a yes or no question, Mr. Caldwell. A long pause. Then, quietly, yes. The courtroom erupted. Not loudly. There weren't that many people there, but the energy shifted. Even Vincent looked surprised, like Theo had just torpedoed his own defense. Judge Martinez banged her gavel. Order. Mr. Caldwell, are you admitting to forging documents? Theo's lawyer was frantically whispering in his ear, but Theo ignored him. I needed her to sign the trust modification, but I knew she wouldn't agree if she understood what it meant. So I made it look like she'd been paid. I thought it would be cleaner that way. Less complicated. Less complicated, the judge repeated, her voice cold. You committed fraud because it was less complicated. I was trying to protect the family business. Theo's voice rose. Mia doesn't know anything about property management. She would have run everything into the ground. Dad left me in charge because he knew I could handle it. Dad left us both in charge, I said, standing up. Equally. That was his wish. And you knew it. Theo turned to look at me, and for just a moment, I saw my brother again. Not the cold stranger who'd sent me an eviction notice, but the kid who used to help me with my homework. The teenager who taught me to drive. The man who'd held my hand at Dad's funeral. Then the moment passed. You don't deserve any of it, he said. You never worked for this. Dad built the business, and I maintained it. You just showed up occasionally and expected to share in the profits. I never expected anything except honesty, I replied. That's all I ever wanted from you. Judge Martinez had heard enough. I'm voiding the trust modification agreement. Ms. Caldwell's 50% interest in the family trust is restored. Mr. Caldwell, you'll be required to provide full accounting of all trust activities over the past 2 years. Additionally, I am referring this matter to the district attorney's office for criminal prosecution. The gavel came down. It was over. After the hearing, Malcolm took me to a coffee shop across from the courthouse. I was shaking, the adrenaline slowly draining away. We won, he said, setting a cappuccino in front of me. Your inheritance is restored. It doesn't feel like winning, I admitted. My brother might go to prison. My family is destroyed. My mom isn't speaking to me. Malcolm was quiet for a moment. Then he said, your father wanted you to have half of everything he built. Your brother stole that from you. You fought to get it back. That's not destroying your family. That's honoring your father's wishes. He was right, but it still hurt. Family should mean something. Blood should mean something. But Theo had thrown all of that away for money and control. My phone buzzed. A text from Dakota. Heard you won. Drinks tonight to celebrate. I smiled despite everything. At least I had friends who actually cared about me. Over the next few weeks, the reality of my victory set in. Malcolm arranged for a full audit of all trust properties. As suspected, Theo had been mismanaging funds, taking excessive management fees, even using trust money for personal expenses. The total value of my half of the estate? Over $3 million in properties and assets. Theo had stolen $3 million from me. And he'd done it all while looking me in the eye at family dinners, birthday parties, holidays. While pretending to be my brother. The betrayal went deeper than money. It was about trust, about family, about everything I'd thought we meant to each other. The district attorney decided to prosecute. Theo was charged with fraud, forgery, and theft. His trial was set for 6 months later. In the meantime, he was released on bail, living in one of the properties he no longer fully owned. I moved out of the Morrison building. Not because I had to, the eviction had been voided, but because I couldn't stand to live in a place that held so many bad memories. I found a new apartment across town, smaller but entirely mine. Malcolm helped me set up proper management for my properties. I hired a property management company to handle day-to-day operations. I met with financial advisors to understand the full scope of what I now owned. It was overwhelming. Dad had built an impressive portfolio, and half of it was mine. I could quit my job if I wanted to. I could travel. I could do anything. But mostly, I just wanted peace. Dakota came over to help me unpack in my new place. She opened a bottle of wine while I assembled furniture. How are you really doing? She asked, handing me a glass. I thought about it.
I'm angry. Ian said. I'm relieved. I'm terrified.
All at the same time. That's normal. Is it normal to hope your brother calls to apologize? even though you know he won't. Dakota was quiet.
Then, yeah.
That's normal too. But Theo never called. Not to apologize, not to explain, not to say anything. He just faded out of my life like he'd never been my brother at all. Mom did eventually start speaking to me again. We met for lunch 3 months after the hearing. She looked older, more fragile. The stress had aged her. I don't understand how it got this bad, she said over soup and sandwiches. You two used to be so close. Money changes people, I replied. Or maybe it just reveals who they always were. Theo's trial lasted 2 weeks. I attended every day, sitting in the back of the courtroom, watching as prosecutors laid out his crimes in detail. The forged documents, the fake payment trails, the theft from multiple victims, not just me. Theo took the stand in his own defense. His lawyer had probably advised against it, but Theo's ego couldn't resist. I was protecting my family's legacy, he said under cross-examination. My father built that business from nothing. I worked alongside him for years. My sister showed up occasionally, but I was the one putting in the work. I deserved to control it. So you committed fraud because you felt entitled to your sister's inheritance? The prosecutor asked. I committed fraud because someone had to make the hard decisions. Someone had to keep the business running. And stealing $3 million from your sister was a hard decision? Theo's face flushed. I didn't steal anything. I earned it. The prosecutor introduced evidence of Theo's spending over the past 2 years. Luxury cars, expensive vacations, designer clothing, all purchased with money that should have been split with me. Does this look like someone protecting a family business? The prosecutor asked, showing the jury credit card statements. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they came back, the verdict was unanimous on all counts.
Guilty.
Theo's face went white as the foreman read each charge.
Fraud. Forgery.
Grand theft. 3 counts of each. The judge scheduled sentencing for 2 weeks later. I watched Theo being led out of the courtroom by his lawyer, and I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no sadness, just emptiness. This was my brother, the person I'd trusted most in the world after Dad died, and he'd become a stranger who'd stolen from me without remorse. Outside the courthouse, reporters tried to interview me. Malcolm had warned me this might happen. My client is pleased with the verdict, he said on my behalf. Justice has been served. That's all we have to say. Detective Brooks found me before I left. Thank you for your cooperation, she said. Because of your case, we've been able to help 2 other victims come forward. Your brother won't be hurting anyone else. That should have made me feel better, but it didn't. I just wanted to go home. Sentencing day arrived with gray skies and cold wind. Mom was there this time, sitting on Theo's side of the courtroom. She didn't look at me when I came in. The distance between us felt like miles. Judge Martinez reviewed the case one final time. Mr. Caldwell, you exploited your sister's trust during the most difficult time of her life. You stole from her systematically and without remorse. You showed no respect for your father's wishes or your family bonds. This court sentences you to 5 years in state prison, followed by 3 years of probation. You're also ordered to pay full restitution to all victims. 5 years. Theo would be 42 when he got out. I'd be 40. Half a decade would pass before we'd even have the chance to speak again if we ever did. Life slowly returned to normal, or at least a new version of normal. I learned to manage my properties with help from professionals who actually knew what they were doing. The income from rent payments was substantial. I reduced my hours at work, started taking classes in property management and real estate law. If I was going to own this empire Dad built, I wanted to understand it. Dakota convinced me to start dating again. You can't let Theo's betrayal ruin everything else in your life, she said. She was right, though the first few dates were disasters. Trust didn't come easily anymore. Mom and I rebuilt our relationship slowly, carefully. We met for lunch once a month, talked about safe topics, avoided mentioning Theo. She visited him in prison sometimes. I never asked about those visits, and she never volunteered information. It was an unspoken agreement between us. A year after Theo's sentencing, I received a letter from him. The return address was the state correctional facility where he was serving his time. I stared at it for 3 days before finally opening it. Mia, it began. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to understand. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Not sorry I got caught. Sorry for what I did. I convinced myself I deserved everything because I worked harder, because I understood the business better, because Dad relied on me more. But none of that gave me the right to steal from you. You're my sister. You trusted me. And I betrayed that trust in the worst possible way. I've had a lot of time to think about who I became and why. Prison has a way of forcing you to face yourself. I don't like what I see. I hope someday you can forgive me, but I'll understand if you can't. You deserved better than what I gave you. Look, Tao. I read the letter twice, then put it in a drawer. I wasn't ready to respond. Might never be ready. But I kept it. Maybe that meant something. 2 years after the trial, I stood in front of the Morrison building where this whole nightmare had started. The property management company had just finished renovations. New windows, updated interiors, fresh paint. It looked completely different from the building Theo had tried to evict me from. Unit 3B had a new tenant, a young couple with a baby. They'd signed the lease last week, excited about the affordable rent in a nice neighborhood. I'd made sure the rent was fair, not inflated to market rate like Theo had planned. Malcolm stood beside me, reviewing final paperwork. You've done well with these properties, he said. Your father would be proud. I thought about Dad's letter, the one I'd found in that old box. His wish for Theo and me to take care of each other, to honor the legacy he'd built. We'd failed at that, spectacularly. But maybe I could still honor the second part. I've been thinking about starting a foundation, I told Malcolm. Using some of the rental income to help families going through estate disputes. Legal fees, mediation services, financial counseling. So they don't end up like Theo and me. Malcolm smiled. The Caldwell Legacy Foundation? Something like that. My phone buzzed. A text from Dakota asking if I wanted to grab dinner. Another text from Mom saying she'd found some old photos of Dad and wanted to share them. Normal life, continuing despite everything that had happened. I looked up at the building one last time. Theo had tried to take this from me, tried to erase me from our family's history. But I'd fought back. I'd won. Not just the legal battle, but something more important. I'd reclaimed my right to exist, to own, to be respected. The eviction notice had been meant to destroy me. Instead, it had revealed the truth. And the truth, as painful as it was, had set me free. I turned away from the Morrison building and headed toward my car. The past was settled. The future was mine to build. And this time, I'd do it on my own terms with people I could trust, creating something Dad would actually be proud of. Somewhere in a prison cell, Theo was living with the consequences of his choices. Somewhere across town, Mom was trying to make peace with losing one child to save the other. And somewhere inside me, a small part still hoped that someday, somehow, we could all heal. But for now, I had properties to manage, a foundation to build, and a life to live. The Caldwell legacy wasn't just about buildings and money anymore. It was about integrity, honesty, and fighting for what was right, even when it hurt, especially when it hurts. I drove away from the Morrison building, leaving behind the worst chapter of my life and driving toward whatever came next. The eviction notice that was supposed to end me had instead become the beginning of everything else. And that, I decided, was the best revenge of all.